So we examined the narrative episodes at the center spine of the ceiling, which is the main linear sequence. But there is so much more to the ceiling frescoes than that linear unfolding. Obviously, Michelangelo created a sense of multiple realms interacting, playing off of each other. And Michelangelo does that by conceiving the entire ceiling as a dialogue between painted bodies moving in space and architectural elements, both real, such as these, and illusionistic ones. And the two are connected and yet distinct. So he has a structure of 3 distinct zones. At the lowest level here, the lunettes, the curved spaces around the curved windows, and the triangular compartments, which are formed from real marble molding, real decorative elements of stone. Those contain figures who represent ancestors of Christ. And then we have a level here where we have the rectangular form defining these fictive architectural niches. So this is an illusionistic compartment with illusionistic sculptures of little naked babies, and inside of those are figures who are prophets and sibyls. The sibyls are an ancient Hebraic female prophet. The prophets who are foretelling the coming of Christ. And these figures, we'll see, they're very monumental, they're full of motion, but they're actually foreshortened and positioned in such a way that we feel as if they are inhabiting the space of the chapel itself, as if they are present in the room, and this architecture is part of the room's structure. Whereas this uppermost scene of stories seems to take place in a kind of a separate realm, a higher reality, the ultimate reality of God, the Creator. 2 of the most famous are these figures, the prophet Ezekiel, the illusionistic carved nameplate indicates that, and the female prophet known as the Libyan Sibyl. So notice the monumentality of these figures, right? Monumental means impressively large, sturdy, and enduring. And it is certainly the appropriate word for the heft of their bodies. And that heft and weight feels physical, but it also conveys the sense that they are witnesses to events of great consequence. And yet, for all that bulky solidity that they have, Ezekiel practically leaps out of his seat as he rotates his torso so furiously that his drapery billows from his shoulders. The intensity of this motion is a metaphor for his powers of prophecy, as if he's startled by visions that are stirring his mind. The Libyan Sibyl is calmer, but her movement is even more spatially complex. Look how she hovers, sort of precariously, on these flexed toes. Look at those toes there. As she's pivoting from her hip joint to reach deeply back in space and lift this massive book that presumably contains her prophecies. Her body is gyrating. It is twisting in a way that communicates energy and strength. And certainly the sculptural muscles of her back enhances that. Pay close attention to this, because she is going to become a kind of beacon for artists that come after Michelangelo. She will become the famous example of a figura serpentina, a figure that is snake-like, like a serpent, twisted, exaggerating spiral in this snaking path of complex movement. This is one of the great inventions of Michelangelo in the Sistine ceiling that is going to actually play out across the coming artistic period. And if you look across the ceiling, you see it everywhere in the painted sculptures, and then in these very enigmatic, fascinating figures, these nudes. They're called ignudi, which simply means nude, because they seem to have no clear purpose. They sit on these marble blocks, they twist, they show off their muscled, complex bodies, they are full of kinetic power, and they have sometimes been claimed to be angels, yet what kind of angels would be these sort of naked male bodies? And it's interesting because we know that these sculptures, these painted figures that are so sculpture-like are partly a response to this sculpture, which was literally dug up in a farmer's field in Rome while Michelangelo was painting the ceiling. This is a very famous artwork that dates back to the classical Greco-Roman period. It's known as the Laocoon, and it is famous for telling the story of a prophet who is a prophet in the stories of the Iliad, who is being poisoned by snakes with his sons, and there's all this twisting movement going on that is partly the twisting of the snakes, but partly the twisting of the agonizing death movements of the figures. Michelangelo was thrilled to discover this, and he certainly was responding to that example. And these figures are, in a sense, I would say, they are a vision of sculptures come to life. They have marble bases, right? Like a sculpture has a base. And in a sense, I think one of the great ideas that's playing through Michelangelo's mind and his art here is the idea of the paragone. He has painted this entire complex ceiling as a kind of paragone debate, a playful competition between sculpture and painting. So he has made all of these fictional sculptures and sculpted fictional architecture, and then made seeming sculptures seem to come to life with color like painting. And in making these serpentine figures, these snaking, twisting bodies, remember that he is a sculptor who works in 3 dimensions, who thinks in 3 dimensions. As a sculptor, he walks around the marble. He conceptualizes the marble block as he chips away and chisels away in terms of a 3-dimensional body. And if we go back to the tragedy of the tomb and the unfinished sculpture here that remains from that effort that was thwarted, look at how it is twisting in a serpentine way. And we can certainly say that Michelangelo channeled his frustrations about the tomb into this architectural, sculptural, painted extravaganza that seems to actually encompass all of those arts, which is why Michelangelo in many ways is the consummate Renaissance artist.